What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's review we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Studio Series exclusive Dark of the Moon Megatron. This figure is just a direct repaint of the previously released DOTM leader Megatron. However, this time he is inspired by his look from the Transformers Universal Orlando ride. You can see here that this is a really nice redeco, and in my opinion this is actually the superior version out of the two Megatron molds. I know this may not be 100% accurate to the movie, but I'm just absolutely in love with this more gunmetal color scheme that Megatron is decked out this time round with. You can see the really nice silver paint here for the actual hubcaps, and bringing it in for a closer look, you can also see some really nice chain details. The entire mold of this figure is exactly the same as the previous version, but in my opinion I just think that the new paint deco really does bring out some of the details which may have been perhaps missed out upon first glance. If you turn here to the front of the cab, you can see you've got all of the jagged spikes which are very Mad Max-esque in their design, and we also have got some nice paint apps here for the headlights. The Mac logo is still evident with the really nice emblem there at the front of the vehicle. And I love the paint that they've used there for the windows. You can see that it's been painted in this really reflective gunmetal paint, so the whole front of the cab has been decked out in that, and it almost fades to a more mattish colour as you get to the back of the cab, but then it's soon picked up when you get to this oil tank, and I just think that looks so cool. Taking a look at the top of the vehicle, and then as we turn to the back, we've also got some details which once again I never noticed, such as this skull here at the back, which is super cool. And all of these details are once again prominent. Now this figure has also fixed some of the original QC issues that I did have on the first version. The main thing that it's fixed in my opinion is the fact that all of the wheels can now roll freely, something which I could never get done with my original version. You can see here that he rolls amazingly, a lot smoother than on the original version. All of the wheels do in fact roll as well, which is really nice to see. I'm not entirely sure whether this is to do with an actual change to the mold, or whether or not the first time round I did get a defective figure, but I have found myself having this figure being able to roll a lot smoothly than on the original version, which is really nice to see. And he also does have some slight tolerance changes in the actual robot mode as well, which I once again also think greatly benefits this figure. The only accessory that this figure includes is of course his shotgun, which is stored underneath the vehicle mode exactly the same way as on the original version. You can see here that this time it's been cast in a lot lighter of a plastic. I will bring out a comparison in just a second. But in my opinion, I actually think that this also looks a lot nicer. He doesn't include the cloak that we see him use in Dark of the Moon. However, I don't believe that that is actually accurate to his appearance in the Orlando ride. But personally, I was never a fan of Megatron's cloak with that original Dark of the Moon release. I've never really been a fan of cloth materials on figures, and just bringing in the original version for a comparison, you can see here that the original was a lot more movie accurate in its color scheme. In my opinion, you've got that almost tannish rust effect going throughout the front of the cab, and then it also highlights in certain places. I actually thought that effect was really roughly done on this original release. In some areas it did just look as if though there had been coffee spilt on the figure. The only area where I think it looks quite nice is actually the front section where all these spikes are. It would have perhaps maybe have been nice if they could have implemented this on this new version, but just taking a look here, you can see that they are drastically different in terms of their color scheme. And then taking a look from the back, and then once again, we'll take a look here at the front of the vehicle, just straightening out the front section. So this new version is definitely not as accurate or as movie inspired as the previous version, but I honestly just think that this one is just so much cooler looking than the original. With this Megatron, I also forgot to mention that he actually does include a second accessory, that being this plastic rope that you would wrap around the vehicle mode. I'm not going to demonstrate it in this video as it is exactly the same as how this one wraps on, and you can see there the color difference. The newer version is actually a little darker than the more lighter older version. And then just bringing in the shotguns for a comparison, this is the exclusive version, and then here you've got the original version, so you can definitely see that the newer version is a lot lighter, although the silver paint does actually appear to be the exact same. It's just been merely molded out of a much lighter plastic. But once again, in my opinion, I do actually think that the newer version looks a lot better than on the older version. Now in this video, I won't be demonstrating transformation as I have already previously shown that in my original review of this version of Megatron, so we'll jump straight from vehicle mode into the robot mode comparisons. And then now taking a look at Megatron in his robot mode, I honestly do think that the paint apps really do excel within this mode. I thought that he looked fantastic within vehicle mode, but really in robot mode here you can definitely see the major changes that Hasbro have implemented here for this particular color scheme, and I know that there'll be many of you who think that the colour scheme looks rather bland. However, there are actually some really nice silver highlights here, although most of it is made out of a more darker type of plastic. Now, before I take a detailed look at some of the actual paint apps, I'll first of all bring in the original version just so we can get this comparison out of the way. You can once again see that this one is taking a more movie accurate deco, whereas this one is more inspired by his look in the ride, although there were some darker lit scenes within the Dark of the Moon movie, particularly when Megatron does blast that Abraham Lincoln statue, where he definitely does look something like this. So personally, I have no problems whatsoever in having both of these figures, and as I stated, in my opinion, I actually really do prefer the colour scheme on this version than on this one. You can see what I was talking about. I was just never really a huge fan of how they distributed the gold on the figure. It did look as if though he'd just spilt coffee halfway down his body and it dripped all over his arms, and then on some places on his legs there was literally none on the upper section. And just bringing in a closer look of the two head sculpts, you can see that the red paint apps are actually in a very similar place. However, this one does have the red bleed slightly more inwards than, whereas this one just mainly focuses on where I presume the wiring detail would be. But just giving you one last close inspection of the two, you can definitely see the darker colour scheme. And then bringing this figure in for a closer look, I think that the head sculpt looks really, really nice. It does actually have quite a fair amount of paint on it, so we have got some silver highlights for the top of the crests and then around the eyes. Red paint apps for both the eyes and the battle damage, and then some nice gold paint apps there for the teeth. We also do have some nice silver paint apps here for the top section of his chest, and I actually do quite like the plastic that they've used here. It's very reflective and definitely does look rather gunmetal in its design. Just giving you a look here, you can see that the paint here, once again, also very reflective. And then we've also got some really nice paint apps here for the forearms. I actually just think that this figure is really nicely done. It wasn't a figure that I thought that I was going to be a huge fan of, and when I did see promotional images of this, I initially had no interest in this whatsoever. But I've got to say that having this in hand, I definitely do think that it's a great looking paint deco, and you can see here some nice paint apps there for the shins. In terms of some of the things that they actually fixed, this one has no loose legs whatsoever. You can rattle this figure around and these hips are not going anywhere, whereas on this original version they were so loose. So it's great to see them actually tighten up the tolerances on this release. As I stated, I noticed when transforming this figure back and forth from robot to vehicle mode that the vehicle mode definitely tabbed in a lot nicer than the original version. So I just definitely think that if you are in the market for picking up a Megatron, then this is definitely the one to go for. I'll quickly run through articulation. So he does have a ball joint at the head, swivel joints here at the arms, as well as a hinge joint. He does have a double joint here for the elbow, as well as a swivel joint just above where the second hinge is. The fingers do move forwards and backwards. They are actually on two separate hinges. And something which I didn't mention in my original review is that there is actually a small tab in there that you can in fact have Megatron hold the shotgun with. Just to line that up and tab it into place, you can see that Megatron is more than capable of holding his shotgun in his other hand. It's definitely not as stable as on this side, but it is an option nonetheless. And you can see just the difference here in terms of the fingers. So this one is definitely a lot more thicker in comparison to the rather puny looking one. Here we have no waist articulation, although the legs can hinge forwards and backwards. They can move out to the sides ever so slightly. There is a swivel joint here as well as a ratchet joint. The knee pad can also move to accommodate the movement. There is also another swivel here as well as another ratchet joint, and then finally the toes can bend here. However, that's mainly due to transformation. Taking a look at a quick size comparison, just in case you don't own this figure, here he is compared next to the recently released Transformers Studio Series Voyager class Sentinel Prime. And personally, I actually do think that the scale here works quite well. Perhaps Sentinel should be slightly taller, although you can hunch Megatron's legs down to a considerable degree. However, I just think that he does definitely look a lot better upright. So there was my comparison review of the Transformers Studio Series exclusive Dark of the Moon Megatron. Once again, personally, I really do like this colour scheme. Initially, I wasn't a fan of this at all. However, upon having this in person, I can definitely see where they were going with this, and the paint apps, in my opinion, definitely feel a lot more Megatron-ish than the original version did. Although it may not be movie accurate, I really do think that this looks fantastic. As stated, they do appear to have also tightened up some of the tolerance issues that were apparent on the original version. Things like the wheels rolling a lot more smoother and the tabs tabbing in a lot more better in vehicle mode greatly amplify my enjoyment of actually transforming this figure back and forth. And as you saw here, the hips are so much more tighter on this release than on the previous version. Now, of course, that could all be just down to me getting a rather defective first figure. However, in my eyes, I do think that those issues did plague the original DOTM Megatron. So it's great to see them take this figure and actually improve upon them. So personally, I definitely definitely do recommend this version. Of course, if you are collecting the Studio Series, you are going to want to pick this one up, as I do believe he is figure number 48, so you cannot miss out on this release. And considering we've had so many different versions of Optimus Prime, it's about time that they gave us some repaints of Megatron. So I hope that you enjoyed my review. If you did, please let me know down in the comment section below. And until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.